Hey guys, Madeleine here, one of the co-founders from Newcoin, and Luke.
Hey,
Yeah.
Luke, blockchain developer in Newcoin.
Yeah, it's super nice to talk on Repconnect. We've just been finishing a big hackathon with Ceramic and several of the people here. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about, and Luke is going to dive deeper into, is the concept of proof of creativity as a new form of reputation in Web3, but porting also from Web2. So we started actually building this system, proof of creativity, really as a concept about 6 years ago. And since then, we've been trying to configure the vast thing of what that could be. And really, I think the starting point is always, what is this form of reputation that's meaningful, and what do we really want to do? And I think we heard like a lot about that today. What is the most meaningful and composable form of reputation? So for us, that's like a starting point, essentially. And really what it is, I think, is that we're entering this new economy that is very much coming from the perspective also of younger generations, where your whole career, your entire life will start from your reputation in the internet. We see that younger generations can, become change the game of industries just by even having a TikTok today. So what we're talking about is really so many signals that are all over the web that can contribute to your creative reputation, whether it's as a developer, maybe you're a GitHub repo, whether it's a creator from your social media. We're really changing the future of work by thinking about having like micro signals across the internet of your creative identity. So what I really wanted to dive into is the fact that we're not talking only about silos, but we're talking about the networks that we're contributing here. And right now, I think in Web3, also in Web2, those are extremely siloed, and we're not benefiting from what is the accumulation of your reputation online. So for example, like we have like your Spotify, maybe different things like that, and we're not collecting this into any form of unity. So what is the future that we're looking to have is where more you can have sort of a cross-synergistic network effect of all of your different data signals. But that comes from also having a lot of data silos that we have to get over and to be able to have essentially, let's say like a composability. I think there's a little lag here, sorry about that. Yeah, and so we've been experimenting this a lot in different types of dimensions. One of the main ones is in the creator economy. More recently, we've seen it in like martial arts, different things like that coming out of the hackathon. So yeah, it could really be many use cases. And one thing I wanted to give a bit of insight on is actually one of the apps that we've been building for several years called New Life. So we started this proof of creativity concept actually as a centralized AI that we learned from and we experimented. We launched New Life around 2019, and you could give basically a feedback to peers. And we launched it initially into like a very select cultural community, and we got featured in places like Vice, Days, Paper, all recognizing this peer-to-peer algorithm that we'd actually created. And so we had so much data, and one of the main problems was that creators couldn't actually port that data from the existing, networks that they had. So that was one of the core problems we wanted to solve, was how could you not only have your reputation in New Life, but also take that from different contexts that you have. So with that, we actually had a very meaningful reputation system, because some of the creators actually got featured in magazines that are relevant for their career. For example, in Days, one creator ended up being the top like the upcoming creator of the year, which has a big cash prize for it. And actually, she'd been number 5 on New Life a couple years before. So we're actually talking from like a lot of experience here, testing those meaningful reputation systems. But I think one of the biggest things that we've challenged, I think Luke is also going to touch upon, is how to connect not only a context, but also create like more opportunity to build up your creative reputation online. So I believe, Luke, you wanted me to have this one up.
Yeah, no rush actually. I'll spin for a bit. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Molly. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a great topic. I love this topic, and I'm so glad there's a presentation on it today and a talk on it today where there's been some amazing points made, because I I think what we're dealing with in the topic of reputation is a paradigm shift of network intelligence. We're now, obviously in crypto, we have open data, we have the potential for open algorithms, and we have the potential for decentralized identity. But historically, what we've got in blockchain is obviously we've got mass amounts of publicly available data, but we have little context and clarity on what that data means. We've got a huge opportunity with interfaces and APIs built into almost every aspect of the stack by default, and we have privacy and autonomy, and so we are discerning. The game is to discern wallet attributes, and discern humanity and for us creativity, influence, and trustworthiness from this publicly available data. And I always like to compare it to what we have traditionally, which is the sort of the yin to its yang, which is in centralized systems, the best examples being obviously large language models and other machine learning systems, is they have mass amounts of decision making and availability of their own data, but the privacy is compromised, and there's progressively a trade-off and diminishing returns when it comes to who owns and controls that data. So it gets tighter and tighter and more siloed the further it gets. And so, yeah, it's been mentioned before, a lot of the great points have, but reputation is by its nature contextual. So the name of the game, I think, with blockchain is to provide context to the publicly available data that we have, as well as unify different ecosystems and bridge together different ecosystems. And reputation, I think, is the reason we're talking about it so much in this space, and the reason that word is maybe not used so much in Web 2 is because I think this is an explicitly Web 3 problem to solve. I think only we can and should solve it. It can be thought of, I think, as the ultimate layer zero sat on top of identity, and crypto and the spirit of what we do in regards to automated privacy and permission has to be the solution. Reputation otherwise becomes a bit totalitarian. But ultimately, reputation is network intelligence, which is why I think the machine learning model is sufficient. We've got data processing and collection. We've got model selection. How do we evaluate what reputation metrics might be relevant in certain contexts generally and in specific communities. And we've got parameters which are being identified which feed into these models as well as weightings. So what I think one way to look at it is we're talking about human-centric machine learning. It has to be opt-in. Individuals have to be at the center of the process. And there has to be opportunities for fair reward and compensation for people opting in with sharing their data. And so what we've got at Newcoin is basically a system and architecture that we hope serves that quite well. Our reputation being algorithmic identity proxies that can be automated based on open-ended inputs from the community and hopefully expanding inputs across different data points on and off chain. We have a big focus on interoperability across networks and even beyond chains. And we want to use this as inputs to be able to feed in creative energy and reputation with as much of a comprehensive data set as possible. And then as outputs, be able to form Sybil resistance, curation, inform machine learning, and obviously open up the social space to be able to have people connect to their own communities better. So big delay there, but we've got the image here. So this is our architecture. So we've got at the center of it is what we call the proof of creativity algorithm. So that's basically an algorithm that is set logarithmically based on a subset of what we call neural tokens. So these are different elements of creativity. So it might be skill-based, loyalty-based, and then we, based on the logarithm, how much somebody has earned in those tokens in the past, that then automates to be transformed into watts, what we call watts, which is our overall metric and measurement of creativity. So the algorithm we use is essentially rewards balance and fairness. So if you're getting too much in one area, then it's going to incentivize you to compensate and get some in the other area. And then we have what we call the encoder, and the encoder is the community generated gateway that decides which conditions can be triggered and contribute to this proof of creativity process. So essentially, this for now is a centralized process. It's automated and administrated by the Newcoin the new foundation, but it will progressively obviously become decentralized, and there'll be voting systems to decide which models can then be included. And these models are what's termed activation functions. So we've essentially got two types. We've got on-chain, which are a little bit easier, on-chain activation functions by checking on-chain conditions, and then we've got off-chain using oracles. So an example of that might be checking, Joke Race has done a presentation this afternoon, so checking the status, a lot of that will be on-chain, but if we want to check via Guild, for instance, or Joke Race, which conditions have been met, then we can check that via oracles, and then that could be fed into the activation function, which will then be weighted at a certain level to be able to generate neural tokens, which will then flow into watts. So the idea is, in our recent hackathon, we've opened up the possibility for people to create activation functions and try to be creative with the amount of ways and types of inputs that they can get. So yeah, an obvious place to start is integrating with the existing rich ecosystem that we've got in terms of the identity and reputation space. We've got such a layered and multi-textured ecosystem. We can check, for instance, whether you've got a Gitcoin passport by a membership of a particular guild on guilds. We can leverage Ceramic, which we've done to open up the possibility for more peer-to-peer boosts of creativity, and then settle that on chain when appropriate. So ultimately, we've got dynamic reputation scoring, which creates qualitative inputs, turns them into quantitative outputs that can be then be used algorithmically and automatically to be able to give an overall score of what we call creativity or reputation. And some of the impacts of this, we can subsidize transaction costs on layer 2s based on certain interactions that have already been had and certain levels of creativity or reputation that somebody has. We can offer opportunities to target more qualitatively high-value individuals. And obviously we've got implications on user behavior and the network health of a certain ecosystem. So finally, a small note on probabilistic consensus. I think what we're dealing with in reputation is probabilistic consensus. We deal with deterministic consensus, obviously massively in crypto, but by its nature, reputation is probabilistic. And probabilistic because we're obviously dealing with likelihoods, trajectories, thresholds, propensities, and consensus because there is automatic settled decisions that come out of this. And we can obviously automate fairly these decisions on chain. And so, yeah, the name of the game is more clear and auditable inputs that lead to automated outputs so that reputation can be fairer and more all-encompassing. Yeah, so I'll leave it there.
Yeah, maybe just a word to wrap up. So I think I echo a lot of things that Evan from Disco is also talking about, the reality of adoption. And I think we have to remember also sort of the interface of this and who's actually going to use it. So we can keep using each other's products in Web3, but it's going to become an echo chamber. So yeah, heavy emphasis is on bringing in users to Web3 through their reputation because they already have that support. So one of the big things that we're working on is essentially being able to onboard a lot of users from, let's say, like consumer-facing side, social side, etc., where you can already use your existing reputation as a way to come into Web3 without having to look at like all of the technicalities of wallets, etc. And that's for us been the way that we've grown, for example, the New Life network. So it's a really good opportunity also for soft onboarding that we're doing. So yeah, thanks a lot. If you have any questions, we're happy to hang out.